The year is 1994. Bret Hart won the WWF Championship at WrestleMania X. The Juice went loose, and it was the year of the Slacker. Clerks hit theaters and made Kevin Smith a cult classic name. Beavis and Butthead was on a tear across U.S. television. Beck, Pavement, and Weezer released albums that would be the pinnacle of alternative rock. And probably the biggest thing to happen was the loss of the face of slacker culture, Kurt Cobain. The slacker mentality was always a DIY style of living where being yourself in a sort of screwed up way would get you somewhere. Which brings me to this idea. There was probably a time in your life where you thought the dumbest thing in your mind was also the coolest thing ever. Then years later, you remember those thoughts and realize that they were the coolest thing ever. Well, that is the perfect description of my favorite band of all time, Ween, and a perfect description of their 1994 album, Chocolate and Cheese. Chocolate and Cheese is probably one of the most wild albums from a year full of unique albums and probably one of the most diverse decades of music in general. But what makes it special? Easy, it was Ween. But we have to go back a few years to understand what is Ween. As a heads up, this is a brief history in the bluntest of terms, so I might skim over details that some diehard Ween fans live by, but this isn't a video essay. Just a review with some background information of the band and their music. With that being said, in 1984, I was hospitalized for reaching perfection. Wrong band. So two kids named Aaron Freeman and Mickey Melchiano were in a typing class, and then they realized that they could make music together. Then they made music together, and they went with the name Ween, and the stage names of Gene Ween, or Jeaner for Aaron Freeman, and Dean Ween, or Diener for Mickey Melchiano. After that, they recorded nonsense on whatever tapes they could get their hands on, and played shows in the New Jersey and Pennsylvania area. Somehow playing on a show with Henry Rollins and giving us this badass quote.
Out of nowhere, out of a total musical vacuum, out of total darkness comes one ray of light. And it's fucking Ween.
During this time, Ween made 3 specific tapes. Crucial Squeegee Lip, Ween Access 2, both as Boognish, yes, that's a reference to Jimi Hendrix, and the live album, The Live Wedgie or WAD excerpts. Eventually, these recordings went on to become recordings for albums, as in 1990, Ween dropped their first album, God Ween Satan, The Oneness. As another heads up, I won't be talking about the prior albums in much detail, because the subject of the video is still going to be about Ween during the time of Chocolate and Cheese and Chocolate and Cheese itself, rather than an in-depth history of the band and all of their albums. With that being said, God Ween Satan became Ween's first major album, with it mostly comprised of tracks from the aforementioned EPs, or songs that they played regularly live. But they are more refined than they were back in the tape versions. Take a listen to You Fucked Up from both Crucial Squeegee and Bumblebee from Axis.
Bumblebee! You got me! Stung my brain!
The sound of God Ween Satan sounded more clean, more polished. That's simply because of the fact it was recorded in the studio of Ween's future bassist and producer Andrew Weiss, and a little bit of help of their new label, Twin Toed, the same label that signed the Replacements. If you have any interest in listening to Ween, you wouldn't do any wrong by listening to God Ween Satan or at least some of the songs on it. Just don't start with LMLYP. Just don't. Personal favorites are Marble Tulip Juicy Tree, Don't Laugh I Love You, and Man. Most of the songs are pretty short, so if you listen to a good chunk of them, you get the gist of early Ween. God Ween Satan did decent in terms of being an indie debut record, but eventually by the time God Ween Satan came out, Ween already recorded their sophomore album, The Pod. To put it bluntly, The Pod, in comparison to God We Satan, is like listening to a recorded version of yourself in the bathroom after having Jack in the Box, and that recording was mic'd up to 2 cans on a string. It's what most Ween fans call brown. It's raw, it's cheap, it was made by 2 guys using a mask to get as high as RVD, doing a frog splash. The album was made in a makeshift studio that Ween called The Pod, where they did the typical stuff 2 college-age kids in the 90s would do: make banger 90s alternative music about the greatest Pennsylvanian invention, a song that's a parody of Phil Collins, and a song about ordering Mexican food. I honestly prefer The Pod to God We Satan for that reason, because it's something that I don't hear often, and if I were to make music, 9 times out of 10, it'll be sounding like The Pod, probably without the charisma of the Ween boys. Personal favorites are Pork Roll, Egg and Cheese, Captain Fantasy, Demon Sweat, Oh My Dear, and of course, Pollo Asado. Eventually, Ween would release their 3rd album, Pure Guava. While also similar to The Pod in many ways, it was also the most commercially successful Ween album up to that point, all because of one thing. They were signed to ATO Records, the same label that had The Doors, Devo, Queen, and probably the most relevant at the time, Pixies, as well as many other artists. And being part of Elektra, it propelled the band upwards in popularity, mainly because of one single, Push the Little Daisies. Push the Little Daisies is pound for pound Ween's most popular song up until this point, and I can see why. It's weird. The music video for it was nuts. It was on Beavis and Butthead.
What the hell is this crap?
It became a college radio staple. While I still prefer The Pod over Pure Guava, there is no denying how successful the album was to get Ween to be popular. My personal favorite songs from this album were Spring Theme, I Saw Gina Crying in His Sleep, Sarah, and Don't Get Too Close to My Fantasy. The album was ultimately successful in many ways, mainly because of the fact that the album was made in the same way Ween used to make music. And because of that, it didn't cost the label that much money, with Ween's manager David Ayers jokingly saying that the album cost $42 and presumably the band was paid $200,000 per album. During this time, studios were not really interfering with the music, mainly because every label wanted their own Nirvana. The band, not the Enlightenment. Eventually, we get to album number 4, and this is where the main course of the video starts. For the making of what would be Chocolate and Cheese, the band realized they wanted to go bigger, so Andrew Weiss went and found the band a new studio, a former telemarketer's office in New Jersey, and the band set up camp there, and to say there was some nonsense during recording would be an understatement. Despite it being an old office building, the surrounding offices were still occupied, with Weiss saying right next door on the other side of the wall, which we found out was paper thin, was Comcast or something. The first thing we did was set up the drum kit and start playing, and we can hear the phone ringing next door, so we realized that there was an issue with the walls. The band eventually wanted to make sure that their noise beats their neighbor's noise, but then another concern came in that the band was pretty much filling up dumpsters, and everyone knew whose trash it was, because I'm pretty sure telemarketer office workers don't chow down on pizzas and Chinese and slurp down booze like them Ween boys. Then the technical stuff came in, with the band going from 4-track 16-track recording to ADAT, a VHS tape-based recording. And back then, Pro Tools and GarageBand didn't exist. Hell, computers for recording was so finicky, and the ADAT was that finicky. There was an undo option, which would take hours to fix, so you either keep it or delete the whole thing and redo it again. And the whole process was slow in general, that you could have watched the Godfather trilogy twice and it still wouldn't be ready. But with great trials, the efforts would be greater because the ADAT allowed the band to sound more full than it had in previous Ween albums. The boys came in with demos of songs that were recorded in the same fashion as their previous albums, and the band recorded 50 to 60 demos and then shaking it down to roughly 25 or so, and then somehow leaving 10 of them off the album, with some of those being songs that you could hear on the 30th anniversary re-release of the album. One thing came to its death for Ween, and that is the end of their beloved drum machine. A running concern with the band is that they would lose their identity with the more high fidelity sound of the new album, and not sounding like their previous records. And the drum machine was such a huge part of Ween's identity. The drum machine and 4-track are the things that made Ween who they are and what made their previous albums brown. They were using a drum machine because they couldn't use an actual kit in the pod, and it became a major part of their 4-track recording system. But with the new standards of chocolate and cheese in terms of recording, they were able to get a kit in the makeshift studio. Diener was the drummer for a few tracks, but they got Claude Coleman to drum for the album as well, with him being so well liked amongst the band. And although a professional drummer strayed further from the pod days, it was a very necessary change for the band, both in recording and live performances. One major thing this album did that Ween continued to do was the use of auxiliary musicians. A lot of the songs for the album had the use of auxiliary musicians, this to fully bring in the different sounds that Ween wanted in the album, because a major defining thing about Ween is that not two songs sound alike, and eventually the band would use session musicians in future albums, more prominently 12 Golden Country Hits and La Cucaracha. Then came the album art. Ween had an extraordinary feel to them in terms of album art, with Godwin Satan having the Boognish, the pod being Leonard Cohen's The Best Of with Chris Mean Ween Williams' face on it, and Pure Guava having this minimalist look with the guavas on an orange background. Ween has always been a crass band, and the album cover for Chocolate and Cheese was no different. The centerpiece, the actual centerpiece, being this Boognish belt that looks like a belt that a boxer would use or a pro wrestler would use for as a championship. The band came up with the idea of using the Boognish belt, but on a quote-unquote gay sailor in a red, white, and blue outfit. Then the idea evolved into the cover that we all know and love, being influenced by the ones used by the Ohio Players. The cover was shot by John Kuzela, and the model being Ashley Savage, with there being outtakes of her being shirtless and more fetish ones like the ones where she's covered in chocolate and cheese chunks. And to be honest, I'm kind of glad those ones didn't happen. With all these things set in motion, Chocolate and Cheese was recorded throughout 1994, and eventually the album was released on September 17th of the same year. But what was the result of that? Well, let's get into it now. Let's start where most albums start. The opening song. I mean, kinda. Yeah, I think that's where usually most albums start. And for Chocolate and Cheese, you can't start any better than Take Me Away. Is like Ween's attempt at making an Elvis-like track, and you know what? I'll take it. It's like a bad Elvis impersonator trying to make stuff up at karaoke, especially with the thank yous that the Elvis impersonator does. This is a great intro to what the new Ween would sound like for the next 2 minutes, because no other song sounds like this. What also happens is we get introduced to Claude Coleman going off on the snares like they were a pair of bongos. Maybe they were bongos, I wasn't really sure. Take Me Away is like a show going from 4x3 to 16x9. It opens up a new, broader view of the world and where it's going. And where we're going is pretty brown. Up next we got Spinal Meningitis, Got Me Down. Spinal meningitis, the disease, is an infection of your spinal cord, mainly the membrane surrounding it, and it can be a very lethal disease, but sometimes it can heal on its own. Spinal Meningitis' song is about a kid, presumably at the doctor, talking to his mommy and thinking he's gonna die, and eventually the kid thinks he's gonna see God. What doesn't help the poor kid's case is the chorus saying, "Smile on, mighty Jesus." For Ween's first big album, this is a really messed up song, especially since the main character of the song is asking his mom if he's gonna live another day. But one thing that this track and Take Me Away have is pretty good guitar solos from Diener. I might be biased because Diener's my favorite guitarist, but man, that dude knows what songs need a solo and what solo that song need. A good old song about the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia. And Ween is the perfect example of brotherly love. Jenner goes off about the many things that makes Philly, Philly. Like the Liberty Bell, bacon steak, Boys to Men, and a hoe on Side Street. While Diener and Claude lay out this soulful beat as the canvas to Jenner's astounding falsetto voice, and the background voice is humming to highlight the track's more calm exterior compared to the songs before and some of the songs after. I tried imitating Jenner's voice while doing karaoke one night, and man, it sounded like a Chris Chan parody, and had doubts the next morning. Really bad doubts. This is actually one of the few songs to get a music video, and it was directed by Philadelphia's own Spike Jonze, who did music videos for a few Beastie Boys songs, Feel the Pain by Dinosaur Jr., and Happy Buddy Holly Fuckface! The music video is the boys getting caught and arrested for stealing the Liberty Bell, and the crowd saying what we should do if me and the boys group chat got leaked. Free them boys. Next up, we have I Can't Put My Finger on It. This is probably one of the most Pod Guava-like songs on the entire album. It has this roughness that the previous albums had, and it also has this somewhat desert Arabian feel to it. Then you have these guitar jingles that Diener leaves, giving us a brief feeling like we're at a beach with seagulls flying and honking. But Jenner gives us so many questions like, what color is it? Can it survive in the sun? Can it even fly? Then after one of Diener's calming jingles, the guitar kicks in with Diener asking the major question. Gene, keep your hands off my little person, and dwarf is a derogatory term. Do better. And eventually the song brings in a chime of some kind to give it more of that Middle Eastern feel to it. This is another song with a music video, with it being Jenner at a Middle Eastern restaurant and posing around with the owner and employees, looking like that one promo image of SpongeBob. That's the first time I mentioned that dude in this video. Well, Diener is playing on the beach, emphasizing that part of the song. Man, Diener's just aura farming right now. He's the best. Next, we have Tear for Eddie. Despite it being the only fully instrumental track on the album, the instrumentals here describe an emotion mainly through Diener's guitar. The song was one of the few tracks that kept the drum machine, so the softer drum beat alongside the other parts of the rhythm section helped propel Diener's part to this soothing tone. Then the distortion hits, and man, I'm sorry if I become the biggest bootlicker for Diener, but it's such a great piece. I'm not going to mention the live version of every song, but almost all live versions of Tear for Eddie is usually the one song in the setlist that just tears the house down because Diener just goes at it. He doesn't make that guitar weep or cry, he makes that thing suffer. This song was done as a tribute to Eddie Hazel of Funkadelic, who passed away in 1992. Eddie was one of Diener's favorite guitarists, and Diener covered Maggot Brain a lot in both Ween and his other band, the Dean Ween Group. Both Tear for Eddie and Maggot Brain are similar in the terms that both of them are more mellow, more calm, and letting the guitar play the story of the song. Up next we have Roses Are Free. Straight up, this is my favorite song on the album. It's weird, it's a bit psychedelic, it's creative, it's everything that I love about Ween in one short but exotic package. And this song is also hard to describe since it's goddamn confusing. It's pretty much Jenner singing a set of instructions about some of the most abstract things there is while having this high-pitched voice, like cutting slab of a melon and pretending you still love me, doing what you will with a wrinkled raisin, resisting the urge to kill, and put the gear on third to climb up a hill, which by the way, don't actually do that. Then Diener comes in with another 10 out of 10 guitar solo, which elevates this number to a personal favorite of mine for the band. The name of the track is a metaphoric meaning where don't trust anything you see. Roses Are Free reminds me a lot of a Cocteau's Twins song, mainly both the guitar riff sounding something like Heaven or Las Vegas. And the lyrics pretty much being incomprehensible, although you could probably understand the song lyrics of Roses Are Free more than an average Cocteau Twins song. The music video, although not official, but beloved by so much of the Ween audience, is also weird as hell. Having these paper puppets and dolls dancing around, with one of them creatures getting crucified, some getting covered in SpaghettiOs, and a lot of them dying, one of them crashing like Clone High JFK. But there's a few dinosaurs, and the blue dude is shredding it, so I guess everything is alright in the world. This song is also known for being covered by the band Fish. I don't know Fish that much, so I'm saying much about the cover, but it is lacking to me. It doesn't have the thing that made the Ween version, that great. But what should I care? Them Ween boys don't really care at all that Fish covered their song. With Diener saying, a lot of people checked us out and discovered there was more to it, and there are fans now. It brought a lot of fans to us, It's interesting to note that Fish covered the song live before Ween did the song live at all, so I guess they can beat Ween at one thing.
It's been a while since
Baby Bitch is probably one of the most straightforward and probably the most serious song on the album. It's Diener talking about the time he re-encountered his ex in a time where he thought he progressed forward in life and moved on with another woman. It's the same woman that Diener talked about in Birthday Boy. Sorry for that, here's a more clear version of it. The song also talks about the unfortunate experience and the lingering effects of the relationship, and saying that he knows the real person that she hides inside. While I say Spinal Meningitis is still the darkest song in the album, Baby Bitch is for sure the most down-to-earth one on the whole thing, with probably a lot of people having similar experiences, which happen to me sometimes. To step aside from the gloomy stuff, we're at the midway point with Mr. Would You Please Help My Pony. Now, Pony is personally another favorite of mine, mainly because it's such a vibey track. But this one, it had to be. Baby Bitch was that emotional of a song that you needed a cool down moment. And what's more of a cool down moment than a song about a kid with a pony that's on the brink of death and the kid is trying to ask someone to help him. Okay, probably not the best description of the song, but the poor horse needs some help. And he's crying like a baby. He ain't getting up. His lungs is full of mucus. And quote unquote, it's all fucked up. Hey, as a dude with fucked up lungs from injuries, I can relate. This song was inspired by a bad trip that the boys had while on tour, and one of them was screaming, "Mister, would you please help my pony?" And fun fact, this was also the same trip that inspired Spinal Meningitis, because they were also screaming, "Mama, am I gonna die? Am I gonna die, mommy?" The next part of the halfway point is Drifter in the Dark.
Do you ever walk?
To be honest, this is unfortunately my least favorite song of the album, mainly because it's not bad, it's good. It's just not much to go off of. It's mainly about this cowboy-esque drifter going into town looking for a spark, and eventually meeting a girl that was just waiting for him. This one is just one of the few parts of the album that has that country influence that the boys had and that they will use in the album after. But that's a story for next time. We're at a big one for the album, Voodoo Lady. This is probably the track that most Ween fans think of when they hear Chocolate and Cheese. It has this Louisiana Bayou feel to it, like the song was written by one of the boys after a one-night stand with an enchantress of some kind. Especially with lines like making love to the gators in the swamp pit and shaking that stick driving me crazy. What also gives it this swampy feel is the floating bass line and the bongos that Claude hits on the song makes it feel like you're in murky waters. And then Diener's guitar solo hits and it has this high distortion level where you don't understand the chords anymore. It sounds like a radio being destroyed underwater, and then you have this catchy hook of, and man, it just makes it feel dirty, swampy, you know, everything. Voodoo Lady also received a music video directed by Roman Coppola, son of Francis Ford Coppola. Video is nuts. First off, the boys are drowning, which, what the hell, free them boys, they shouldn't be wet. And the music video also fits the swamp vibe considering the boys are prominently underwater with Diener shredding. What's wrong with that baby? Oh my eyes! Why is Ween drowning? The music video also had a lot of interesting ways it did its effects, like a NASA scientist making mirrors that made it seem like the fire was working underwater, and using an underwater camera and perspectives to make it seem like Ween wasn't blowing bubbles out of their mouth. Overall, pretty great song. But let's calm down a bit and head to Joppa Road. This song gives me such a summer road trip vibe that it just brings a smile to my cold soul. It's like hanging out with your homies, getting a 44-ounce cup of Dr. Pepper, and slamming it down. If this song doesn't make you happy, are you even human? Pavement has Shady Lane, Ween got Joppa Road, and everybody at least has one. It references Sunoco a lot, a gas station primarily in the eastern part of the US. I have never seen a Sunoco, but I've been to a Conoco and a Come and Go, so change Sunoco to one of those things and boom, relatable. Plus, my southwestern ass will never trade my beloved Allsups for a Sunoco. There is a Joppa Road with a Sunoco, but it's in Baltimore, so I don't think I'll be there anytime soon, but it's cool that life imitates art. Joppa Road is a real American song, and that's all. Now we're at what many people consider their least favorite track, Candy. Personally, this is one of those songs that I won't really search for it on its own, but as an album piece, it's addictive, like Candy. It's a nice little treat to those who stuck with the album so far, like Candy. This song is just mentioning pairs of stuff that are, similar to each other, something similar to Sweet. Like Candy. A fun fact about Candy is that the vocals were done by Chris Mean Ween Williams, a friend of the group and whose face you might see on the pod. And then there's explosions happening in the background, noises in the background, and it's not the only thing that's going to be happening there, because you know why? The screaming you hear in the song actually has a wild backstory where Diener convinced a drunk Jeaner to get inside the trunk of his 74 Coupe de Ville that he mic'd up with Andrew Weiss with a phone from the studio that was for the album, and the other phone was on speakerphone, playing in front of a mic. Then Diener drove around town, swerving and thrashing the car, and trying to make sure Jeaner makes as much noise as possible. All members of the band were so plastered that Diener thought that Andrew probably didn't hit record, but fortunately he did, and we're forever grateful for it. We're at the home stretch of the album with Buenas Tardes, Amigo.
Buenos tardes, amigo.
Buenas Tardes Amigos is the one track that's like other specific ones you hear from other Ween albums, where it's the whole chorus. To be quite honest, this one track you have to listen before watching the whole video, so go listen to the song right now. Welcome back. Now let's get into it. Buenas Tardes Amigos is this Spanish-Mexican ballad about this man that wants revenge for his brother after he got killed. I love spaghetti westerns. This is such a love letter to the entire genre, but it's still Ween. It's still able to get a few laughs with it, mainly with the pronunciation of some of the words, primarily the Spanish ones. It's all the ones you see on a Taco Bell menu, like Cinco de Mayo, Honcho, Fiesta. This song is pretty different to the other ones Ween did before, and maybe even after, where it tells this long story of how the man describes pretty much everything that has happened before and what's happening currently and what will happen in the future because of his brother's death. Like how his brother was a ladies' man, a mama's boy, then approaching the killer of his brother and eventually putting him to death. But the plot twist happens and it's revealed that the narrator is the brother's killer. Okay, it's not that deep of a song, but it's still a pretty fun one. The whole song was inspired by a Sesame Street bit, with Diener saying, Aaron wrote that from Sesame Street. You know how Sesame Street has those little Spanish sequences? You know, they had Maria and a couple other characters, and occasionally they would do that. And everyone was watching it and then said, Hola means hello. Buenas tardes means good afternoon. And I just think he ran with it. The instrumentals of the track also sells the Mexican vibe to the whole song, with the slower drums, the ringing bells, and the claps. It's like being in an Eastwood movie made on a budget of a Taco Bell dollar menu. Does Taco Bell even have a dollar menu? But the background guitar is mostly done by one of the few session musicians, Steven said, giving the track that authentic spaghetti western feel. During Steven's recording, the lights went out in the studio and Sid kept on playing on the guitar, and honestly the lights going out in the recording is such a Brown thing that I gotta respect the man on that one. And before the plot twist of the entire song, Diener kicks it into high gear with another classic solo, filling us with tension of something akin to a Mexican standoff. In all honesty, Buenas Tardes Amigos is a real great song that I think everyone should listen to. Not everyone, maybe a few people.
We'd see each other again.
Age.
Next we have the HIV song. There isn't really much to say about this song. It's just the boys shouting out, AIDS! HIV! While a nice funky tune plays. This was such a necessary breather from Buenas Tardes Amigos, and a nice little break before the last two songs. What's interesting to note is that the 33 in the third book for Chocolate and Cheese says that this song has controversy surrounding it, which makes sense since this was during the time in the US where everyone was terrified of AIDS and HIV and were using it as a form of gay panic. A few years prior, Magic Johnson was diagnosed with HIV and temporarily retired from basketball. Freddie Mercury passed away from it as well, and ads were playing all over TV trying to warn us about the dangers of both HIV and AIDS. The band has roots in New Hope, a relatively large LGBTQ area, and Ween has a large LGBTQ fanbase as well. And the opinion on the song from that section of the fan base has been that it's funny as shit. With Ween's then manager David Ayers saying, "People appreciated the joke. I remember being in San Francisco and I think it was probably the first time I ever heard the HIV song. So they decided to whip that out to open their set in San Francisco, and I just thought that it was the boldest fucking thing you could possibly do. And I was again concerned that people were gonna flip out, but the whole room, including gay couples, was laughing hysterically." It's glad to know that everyone can have a good chuckle at something that might have been offensive from an outsider's perspective, but in all honesty, it's just two dudes shouting, AIDS! HIV! out loud to a crowd.
HIV.
The wash is out.
We're at another emotional high point with what Diener was talking about. What I really love about Chocolate and Cheese is that it simmers down to the end, just to give you a calm landing as the album closes. Diener was talking about is the thing that the album needed for the end. The acoustic guitar leading the way with friend of the band, Scott Lowe, playing the mesmerizing synth throughout the whole track. This one is another emotional one because this is about the tale of one of the two boys we grew to love throughout the whole album. As this was inspired by a previous song Ween did for Pure Guava, I Saw Gina Crying in His Sleep. Where Diener saw poor Papa Gene Ween crying, presumably from one of his breakups, and was saying stuff to calm down Gene so both of them can get some sleep. Gene wrote the song as his way to comfort his friend, since Gene experienced the same emotions that Dean felt, and realized that Dean shouldn't have to worry. And Diener talked about this in an interview saying, "It's like Aaron's little tribute to me. Like he started to experience it and understand what I was talking about. You know what I mean? Whether it was girl problems or whatever was going on with him. And that's kind of weird to talk about. No one's ever actually asked me that, and I haven't really thought about it. But that's what it's about. It's about staying awake all night, like having panic attacks, and the sun comes up and you haven't slept, and there's no separation between the day before and the new day, and you've got no relief. And it's worse, you know. So for a happy song, it's actually got a pretty dark backstory." I didn't really talk about Ween past 1994, but from 2012 and 2016, Ween broke up due to Aaron Freeman's declining mental state, excessive touring, and substance abuse. But eventually, the boys came back together, and the first song they played together in 4 years was Recently, Ween announced a break from touring due to Diener's mental health, thus canceling the 30th anniversary show for the album. Just hope that Diener is alright, because someday, we hope one day, you return again, our friend.
Again, my friend.
Now we're at the last track of the album, Don't Shit Where You Eat. This is a proper farewell from the band to us, telling us to enjoy life the best we can, giving us advice to take the many pleasures of life. The track is like a walk on the park or laying on a hammock. It's the rest and pleasure we all need once in a while. The mellow drum beat from the drum machine and the flowing acoustic guitar also sells this feeling of being at zen and giving us the biggest advice: don't shit where you eat, because you want to do that. That's nasty, you troglodyte. The piece of advice was one of the many things that Diener's dad said to him when he was younger, stating that Don't Shit Where You Eat is one of like 10 songs that we've done on things that my father has said. My father was filled with all sorts of great quotes, like piss up a rope is another. Don't shit where you eat is just sort of like a life advice. Lessons, the king of thing. I can't really remember too much about it other than the expression was so funny, we felt it was worthy of its own song. You know, some paternal advice sometimes goes a long way, don't you think?
Don't shit where you eat, my friend.
Chocolate and Cheese released to relatively positive fanfare. To be fair, NME back then barely liked anything, so a 6 out of 10 ain't that bad. The album became a cult classic over time, either because of Beavis and Butthead, the appearance on Conan O'Brien, the amount of music videos for the album, the cover of Roses Are Free by Fish, or the provocative cover. I'm assuming that one. The album was heard and known to the masses, and Ween was essentially at the top of the world. The band went on tour throughout 94 and 95, thus getting more brownie troops on board for the future of the Ween. But what was that future? Well, let's say the future would be expansive as the ocean while staying tried and true to themselves. Of course, it'll be a country album. Hey, it was a pretty good country album at that. To wrap up the video, let's discuss the different releases of the album. The album was released initially on CD, cassette, and vinyl, but good luck finding any of those original versions without paying the price of both of your balls and your future children. Recently, ATO Records re-released the album on vinyl for the 30th anniversary, containing a bonus disc full of demos and unreleased songs from the recordings of the album. I have the album. It's the special edition with the colored LP, and I personally love it. It comes with a large booklet that details what the band felt about the album 30 years later. You can get the normal black LP version on Discogs for around market price. It's one of those few Ween albums that you can easily get on vinyl without going broke because you asked for Shinola. Thanks for watching. This has been a video I've been wanting to make for about a year or so I'm glad that you checked this one out to the end. I'm planning to make more videos like these based on other albums as well, so please subscribe and stay tuned, and also leave a like. I appreciate it. Bye, Pipeheads. Talk to you soon. And don't shit where you eat, my friend. Later.